The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. The NATO chief is now facing serious scrutiny after making explosive claims that Russia and China are threatening the Arctic region. Claims that are shaking global discussion, raising one critical problem. When pressed for evidence, the answers fall apart. The world is watching closely as NATO's leadership struggles to clearly justify why the Arctic has suddenly become a battleground in their narrative. At the same time, a far more uncomfortable truth is emerging, and NATO and the United States are themselves locked in growing tension, especially over Greenland, exposing internal fractures within the alliance. What was once presented as united now looks like confusion, rivalry, and strategic disagreement, right at the heart of the Western power structure. Instead of addressing real economic pressure, energy reality, and shifting global power, NATO appears obsessed with creating new threats, focusing heavily on Russia and China, while ignoring the signs of America's gradual retreat from global dominance. The Arctic, it seems, has become a distraction, a stage for fear narrative, rather than a zone of genuine immediate danger.
While Donald Trump boasts about his well-advertised plans to acquire Greenland, NATO's chief has encouraged the alliance to protect the Denmark-administrated island from the threat coming from Russia and China. There are not one single Chinese or Russian ship around Greenland. Let that be stated as a fact. Let's not be naive. Even if there are not that many ships sailing at the moment, we know that with the sea lanes opening up in the high northern Arctic, and this is not only true for Greenland, this is true for the whole Arctic area. It's not only Russia active there, it is increasingly also China being active there. So when it comes to the Arctic region, we have to work together as an alliance, and that's exactly what we are doing, and we are now putting more details to the next step to make sure that we indeed can do that as a collective alliance. You can be sure of that. That says, Western media claim NATO powers, particularly the UK, France and Germany, are now considering providing military support to Greenland. With Washington's plans for Greenland moving forward, the NATO unity is showing signs of fragmentation. Denmark recently warned that the US acquisition of Greenland could effectively end the military alliance altogether. In order to prevent the organization's complete collapse, Denmark and its European partners are reportedly in talks to prevent what they call a reckless US action that threatens Arctic security. And let's cross live now to Chinese lawyer and academic chair professor at Soochow University in Beijing, Victor Gao. Welcome to the program, sir. With the NATO now planning its military presence in Greenland and Trump citing the presence of Russian and Chinese so-called threats in the vicinity of the island, and now Denmark is sounding the alarm about the American expansion. So who is the real threat in this situation, do you think? Very obviously, the real threat, and right now the only threat to Greenland, is President Trump and his government, which threatens to take over Greenland, to plunder the assets of Greenland for the use of the United States. There are no major Russian or Chinese ships in the vicinity of Greenland at all. From the Chinese perspective, there is no iota of interest of a geopolitical level of analysis for Greenland at all. Therefore, anyone with any iota of intelligence in this world knows that it is the United States which is threatening Greenland. And it's amazing that the Secretary General of NATO doesn't seem to have any iota of intelligence in his mind. Is not the Secretary General of NATO, is the Secretary General of the United States at NATO. So I think we are faced with truly a historical moment when you really have very incapable people running a big organization like NATO. and NATO is on the verge of being fractured because one NATO member, in this particular case, the United States, the most important NATO member, wants to use war against another NATO member, which happens to be Denmark. And this is the moment of truth. And the Secretary General of NATO is not eager to save NATO, but is very eager to plunge NATO more into the abyss. This tool is turning NATO into the laughingstock for mankind. Third, and Trump has stated that he will complete all his plans in Greenland, quote, whether they like it or not, including U.S. citizens. How does China view such an approach? Well, China is firmly opposed to any acts of aggression, wars, for example, to take over another country or part of another country. Now, I would say if President Trump and the U.S. government dare to move in that dangerous direction, it will really spell the beginning of the end of Pax Americana, because it will reveal the true color of the United States. The United States is not caring about security, sovereignty, territorial integrity of other countries. It only cares about plundering the assets and the wealth of other countries, even at the cost of violating the sovereignty and territorial integrity of other nations. This one will mark a free fall from the so-called top of the mountain to the abyss of the rule of the jungle. And history will look back and judge. This will be a very dark moment in the history of the United States because it turns itself into a parrot, and it turns itself into an aggressor, an invader, and preys upon a country which has prided itself for decades as a very staunch ally of the United States and a proud member of NATO, that is Denmark. And Beijing has repeatedly raised concerns over NATO expansion in Asia-Pacific, with the alliance now setting its sights on the Arctic. What reaction can we expect from China? Well, China is firmly opposed to NATO expansion, especially into the Asian-Pacific region, because China believes if NATO moves in a dangerous direction, it is a violation of the original charter obligations of NATO as an organization. But now, NATO itself is on the brink of collapsing under the weight of U.S. threatened invasion of Greenland, disregarding the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Denmark. So I think this is the moment of truth. All of us need to watch the situation very closely, and I hope mankind will call on the United States not to commit any act of aggression against a proud nation like Denmark. On this particular point, I am completely on the side of the Danish people and the Danish government. No one should allow the United States to commit an act of aggression against Denmark and seize Greenland. I understand the about 50,000 people in Greenland are opposed to any act of aggression by the United States to take over Greenland. They want to decide their own fate, and they have no interest of being acquired by the United States. This is the moment for President Trump and his government to really demonstrate at least an iota of interest for democracy and respecting the will of the people of Greenland and people of Denmark.
In this report, a Chinese man named Victor breaks everything down in detail. What is really happening behind the headlines? Victor carefully exposes why these Arctic threats claims don't add up, how Greenland has become a silent flashpoint, and why NATO's current focus may actually reveal weakness rather than strength. This isn't just about the Arctic. This is about power, decline, misdirection, and what comes next. NATO is bent on targeting Russia and China, when the United States of America is seriously thinking about grabbing Greenland no matter what. Because after Venezuela, we all know Donald Trump's next target, as he said, is Greenland. Denmark is refusing. We heard that some countries have sent even warships to Greenland. And instead of NATO nations to unite and fight against this threat, they are rather paying attention so much on Russia and China, which we heard are not the real problem, because these people do not have interest in claiming Greenland. Why is NATO not focusing on the United States of America that has openly declared its intention over Greenland, and rather chasing after China and Russia? We expect that NATO will unite and fight against the United States of America interests in Greenland. But we've seen the division. Some are not willing to do anything. And power struggle, power structure, power dominance, everything is happening. But it's like NATO is looking for mercy, or NATO is trying to divert people's, like nobody knows what NATO is actually doing. This shows clearly that something is missing, something is lacking in that organization, or things are not moving as they portray the alliance to be. Is it because they know Russia and China will never come out direct confrontation? Like, there are a lot of questions we need to ask. And even though we try to ask, we do not have answers, but we keep monitoring, because this is exposing NATO big time to the whole world. It's exposing these people to us in Africa. That the people who always stand firm, sometimes they said, when you see how beautiful the surface of the water is, doesn't mean that there's no depth inside. And that is why as Africans, we always need to also put the depth under and at least shine in the surface. We are not the only people with problems among us. There are people with lots of problems, but always they do everything possible in their power to cover things up. And this is exactly what we need to be doing. And instead of us seeing ourselves as the real enemy, let's put everything aside, put our brother aside, and start targeting the other person. This is the tactics we need to learn. Instead of targeting ourselves, let's start targeting the other ones who are really threat to us. Not to be like NATO, who is living the retreat and chasing after somebody. That is what we are doing in Africa. Those who are oppressing us have freedom to operate here the way they want. This is the problem. And we are bent on fighting among ourselves for nothing. We are not the problem. People are causing this problem among us. And instead of us to unite and portray ourselves to be united to the world, we are rather dividing ourselves and rather claiming to be united with the same people that are oppressing. It will never give us the freedom we are looking for. And until we start focusing our attention directly on things that are affecting us, we'll continue to be running, doing the same thing like always we do, and we expect different results. And speech changes nothing, because when it comes to that, you know how best our leaders can give us speeches. You understand? They will melt you down with speech. But when it comes to action, that's where the problem lies. And we need actions. And we need to start seeing ourselves as one, start uniting and fighting against the external ones. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall. And united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world. In Europe,